Hello everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to my shop. I'd like to show you in this video tutorial how to set up your RDT sensor and widget on an FR Sky radio. So of course the first step would be to connect your RDT sensor. So the 3-wire servo plug, in this case it's a KingTech RDT, goes to the ECU or DRM to the GSU port, the same port you would use with a little LCD for the turbine. And the other side, the 2-wire, the red and black, goes to the receiver S port. Please note the red is signal, it's not a plus, and that's perfectly normal. If the RDT is blinking quickly, like in this example, that means it's picking up a valid signal from the ECU. It's connected to the ECU and receiving its data, so that's a good sign. If it wasn't picking up the ECU signal, it would be flashing slowly at about 1 flash a second, just waiting for the ECU connection. So, to the radio itself, this is the original layout. I got nothing set up here, and I'd like to start by first discovering the sensors and see if I'm getting the sensor data in my radio. So I'm going to go into the model menu and telemetry, and you can see that here I only have the receiver sensors, RSSI, RX number, and RX battery. Since the RDT is already connected, I'm just going to hit the discover new sensors button right here on the top. So as soon as I do this, you can see that I'm now reading a bunch of sensors: RPM, ADC 3 and 4, temp 1, temp 2, and so on. So I'm gonna stop the discovery. This is all in the manual, by the way. If you read the manual, it comes with the RDT widget. This is all thoroughly explained. Then the second step would be adding the DIY sensors, and that is done by clicking this button, Create DIY Sensor, and Auto Detect. Now it's picking up 3 sensors, A10, A20, and A30. So I just click A10, and I can see it now here. Then do the same for A20, and I can see it here. And the same for A30 if you have it, like in this example. So now we also have the 3 DIY sensors. So all of the sensor data has been picked up in the radio. That's good. And now we need to set up the widget. So for this example, I'll be setting up the RDT gauges widget. But if you run the regular RDT widget without the gauges, it's very similar. It's basically the same setup, but doesn't have the turbine parameters in it. So you can still follow this tutorial even if you're running the regular RDT widget. So let's say I want to add screen 2 and put the RDT gauges widgets on screen 2. So I can click the display button or the little square with the plus. It's the same for the display menu, configure screens, then plus to add a new screen. Now a very important thing, a lot of people make this mistake. There are 2 full screen layouts here. You must choose the one that actually reads full screen in the middle and text. It's the one that's marked here. So choose that one, configure change widget, and pick the widget you want. In our case, it will not be RDT, it would be not RDT twin, it would be RDT gauge, which is this one. So RDT gauge it is. And already, if I go out to the main menu and click the page button to scroll, you can see that I've got the widget loaded. So at first, it's not reading any data because it's not set up yet, but it's already looking pretty cool. So if I want to set it up, there are a few options for that. I can click the button, click the screen on the widget itself, configure widget, and here I have the full configuration. So I'm using a KingTech turbine, so my ECU would be KingTech. The sticks mode on the radio is mode 2, that's fine. Fuel factor. You need to read through the manual to understand how to calibrate your fuel factor. The default value is 100, which is okay to start with. Then the fuel tank size in milliliters. Let's say I have 3.2 liters, so I'm going to set it to 3200. And I can move on. Fuel alert. If you want a low fuel alert, leave it on, which is the default. And then it's asking at what amount of fuel you want your alert. Let's say I want it at 900 milliliters to sound the alert. So I'm going to put 900. And the fuel alert rate in seconds. 5 means it would give you an alert every 5 seconds. Well, maybe it's a bit too slow for me today. I'd like to use 3 seconds. So just going to put 3 here. Next part is the sensor configuration. We basically have to tell the widget which sensor to use in which function. So first, RPM sensor. I'm going to choose telemetry and scroll down for RPM. Then temp 1, which is EGT, telemetry, temp 1. And it goes the same way for all. Temp 2, again, exactly, just follow what's written on the screen. Temp 2, ECUV is ADC3, so we're going to pick ADC3. And ADC4. By the way, I forgot to mention, but the sensors which you need to assign on these slots also come in an Excel table with your RDT widget file. So I know this by heart already, but of course, for your specific turbine, please follow the Excel table. So I know that for this one, I have to use only DIY1 and DIY2. So DIY1 is A10, DIY2 would be A20, and then we can move on. Okay. I don't have a current sensor on my KingTech or the DIY3 or the consumption. I do have RSSI, so I'm going to pick RSSI, and I do have an RX battery sensor, RX battery 1, coming from the receiver, so let's pick that as well. No air pressure sensor in this one. So we're finished setting up the sensors, and we now have the gauges configuration. So the gauges do have a default value, so already if I go out, I can start seeing the gauges going live, and this is because my ECU is now sending values of an engine that's actually working. So you can see that everything is alive already, and I'm going to set up the ranges for the gauges now. You can do that in one shot. I just wanted to show you that the widget is already working. So the gauges config says turbine data. This is the part where you need to go to your turbine manual and see your actual turbine data. So maximum RPM, let's say for this turbine I'm on 160,000, so I'm going to choose 160. And then my idle is 55, so I'm going to set it to 55. Then the minimum battery voltage is the voltage at which I want the battery gauges to show minimum. So let's say it's a 2-cell, just as an example, right? Let's say it's a 3-cell life. So if it's a 3-cell life, I'm going to set it to 9 volts. And the maximum battery voltage is 10.2. So I'm going to set it to 10.2. Then max pump. To set the max pump, I suggest running the turbine and seeing on the screen what your max pump value is and setting it accordingly. Let's say I've ran it and I saw a value of, I don't know, 400. And I'd like to have a little spare, so I'm going to set it to 450, the max pump. This is just for display. It doesn't have any other meaning, so it's just for your own comfort. And maximum EGT, I think 800 degrees Celsius is pretty good for a maximum EGT value. And that's it. If we go back to the widget screen, again, my ECU on the table bench is sending example data. You can see RPM and EGT and so on, even if the engine is not running. But you can see everything is alive. We have our timer running. We have everything running. We have our fuel gauge counting the fuel and going down. We have the throttle gauge moving. We have the status. Everything's alive. So that's basically everything you need to do in order to set this widget. If you're running the regular RDT widget, it's basically all exactly the same right up to this point where it says gauges config. This part does not exist in the regular RDT widget. So you can again follow this tutorial and just disregard this part and get the same results for the RDT widget. So I hope that explains everything for you guys. It's been a lot of fun developing this stuff, the Xavionics sensors and the Xavionics widget, and I'm very happy with this result, and I hope you are too. And one more thing, do watch my video on how to set an engine cut alert. That's a different video on my channel, because that may save your model one day. The biggest feature these RDT sensors have, other than the very nice display, is the ability to give you safety alerts whenever something bad is going on. Low fuel is actually incorporated into the widget, so that is handled automatically. But an engine cut alert or a low battery alert or a high temperature alert, that you have to set yourself using logic switches. So I do have a video on how to set a smart engine cut alert, and you can watch that on my YouTube channel as well. That is youtube.com/i3dm, and you can look it up and find it. So I hope you liked the video. It's been a lot of fun making it, and as always, see you guys at the field.